Hello. I'm really lucky to have Karl to talk before me on one hand. On the other hand, I'm not so lucky because it's difficult to beat his stage charisma. He's a true rock star. Yeah, but I'm going to build on many points actually that Karl made in his speech. But I'm trying to take it to the national level and to put it in the discourse of building digital education ecosystems. And as I don't know so much about the other countries, I'm using the Estonian case to illustrate it. And my special focus is on how we have been organizing through many difficulties and not an easy way the process of building this digital education ecosystem through the cooperation between academia, ministry and national agencies and private sector. Because I know in many countries, especially in many larger countries, these two or three groups, they live in their own bubble and they don't communicate, collaborate so much. But let me start from maybe a little simplified juxtaposition or black and white opposition, binary opposition between traditional paradigm and new emerging paradigm in digital learning platforms. I've been really working in this field of building online learning systems and platforms for more than 20 years. The first systems online learning platform we launched was in 2001 for schools in Estonia, and 2003 another one for universities and colleges that was for 6-7 years was bigger than Moodle in Estonia. Yeah, through this process we learned the weaknesses also of these learning management systems, and now we see how the deficiencies and problems of these traditional learning management systems and learning platforms actually hinder the progress in e-learning. So what are the main problems? The digital learning platforms that are built in like a traditional classic paradigm, they tend to be monolithic. They as Karl mentioned, Moodle tries to have everything inside of it. Not just it's not just a file repository. It also includes the test building tools. It includes communication tools like forum and chat and whiteboard and so on. Most of it exists elsewhere. And if you would give people, both lecturers and students, a choice, they would probably not use the whiteboard inside of Moodle, but rather some more modern and flexible one which is outside of the Moodle. The other thing is that the traditional systems are very much centralized. So they are under control of IT departments of universities that are becoming really paranoid about cyber attacks and security, safety, privacy, and so on, which are all legitimate concerns. Yes, but there must be also other way to address these concerns, not only through centralization, because we see it also how it happens outside of the digital education with let's say in the school system. It's also that many countries, when they feel that they have some problems with the quality of school education, they try to address this concern with more centralization, more testing, more control, more inspections, although we know that the two best countries in Europe regarding the reading skills, mathematics skills, and science skills are Estonia and Finland. And these are two countries where school inspection doesn't exist and haven't existed for the last 20 years. So, and just like the same way also in the digital world, there must be a way to address these concerns, legitimate concerns about privacy, security, without centralization. The other thing is that the systems, this centralized, monolithic systems like Moodle and this UIS, the study information system that was criticized by Karl, they've become so big that even the thought of kind of replacing them with something else, with more distributed versions, it scares all the people in IT departments, in university administration, in accountant department, because they're so expensive tools. The university has invested millions to build these tools, and they just cannot afford to throw them away and replace with something else. And as a result, we have static, very stable tools which don't evolve anymore. They are like a picture of the past that looks at us from the screen. Another thing is that today where more and more decisions also about educational process should be made based on hard evidence and data. So this kind of systems, they actually don't give too much data to users, to students, to lecturers, professors, the head of studies, and so on. It's very limited information that you can get it out if, let's say, compared to some very advanced learning analytics dashboards or just Google Analytics, for instance. It gives you so much richer picture about the use of the platform and the potential threats and the trends and so on. Yeah, and finally it is closed. So if you find some really excellent external tool that you would like to connect to this Moodle or study information system, it's usually so difficult that everybody gives up. But the merging paradigm is characterized by a completely different type of sets of digital tools, which are not monolithic. They are rather evolving ecosystem of distributed tiny micro tools that actually are interoperable, talk to each other. They evolve dynamically, and from time to time they're replaced by better tools. And this is how ecosystem works. So you have niches, ecological niches in the ecosystem, and if in one niche there is more competitive, more fit service that emerged just last week or last month, that they actually, this service could kill some existing service and replace it by the users. And if users have a word to say about choosing this tool and about replacing these tools, then you get this kind of continuously evolving, always modern, always dynamic ecosystem instead of this monolithic, massive, stable, concrete building. In this kind of flexible ecosystem, learner and teacher alike, they both have more autonomy about not only about changing the tools and connecting them, but also about how they use these tools. I think one of the best parts of Karl's presentation was his personal learning theory. Did you notice that he has actually, without any theoretical background, because he's a computer science student, not an educational science student, he actually laid out the core of his own personal learning theory, how the knowledge is created. And he said that the most important knowledge is knowledge how to create knowledge. So this is epistemic concept of a young person who is not theorist about knowledge, but actually has created his own personal knowledge theory. And this is what this new kind of ecosystem allows, because people are different. People are supposed to have different learning theories and different learning practices. That the system support them, should support them, not to force them to use this uniform model that is delivered by Google or Moodle. This kind of new tools also offer much richer data for learning analytics and decision making about improving your learning practices and skills and also theories. Most of these ecosystems are relatively open, so it means that you can not only change the one communication tool to another, but you can also expand your ecosystem with the tools that do not exist in the toolbox of other learners and teachers. So, we've been using this concept of the digital learning ecosystem now a lot, and it was mentioned also yesterday a couple of times. Of course, everybody understands that it actually comes from biology, because theory of biological ecosystems have been evolving already for decades, and it's well-established theory, recognized. You can study it for 5 years in the masters, and then do your PhD in ecology, and you still haven't learned everything about this theory of biological ecosystems. But the main components, which most of us know already from the high school, the biology program in the high school, is that the biological ecosystems actually are communities that involve both living organisms like plants and animals and microbes who live in conjunction with their abiotic environment, which has some important components for their life cycle, like air, water, light, soil, where they can get nutrition. And this living and not living part of this ecosystem, they actually interact always, and they cannot live one without another. So the key components of biological ecosystem theory involve nutrition cycle, that actually is the foundation for energy flow, and in this energy flow, both the biotic and abiotic components of the ecosystem actually play the role. You know, the energy could come from sun, but it could come also the green stuff you eat. But one of the most important characteristics of biological ecosystems is self-regulation. So without self-regulation, biological ecosystems die. So if you somehow block the self-regulation, hinder it, it dies, or it goes through the succession to some other type of ecosystem. You know that forest, when the forest cannot live anymore in a self-regulated manner, you cut the forest. The deforestation might result with turning this ecosystem into desert ecosystem. This is called succession. But another very important concept we know from biological ecosystems is ecological niches. So these are the smaller areas in the ecosystem where different species, the biotic species, actually cohabitate together and interact with each other and form these nutrition cycles. And I think all of these concepts now I mentioned from biological ecosystems theory, they have their counterparts in digital ecosystems theory, which is still under progress, but we can see that I already used today the concept of digital ecological niches. So, for instance, I see as a niche, for instance, in the digital ecosystem, the communication niche. So that requires people who want to communicate or need to communicate, and also the tools that they use for communication. So they have asynchronous and synchronous tools for different purposes and needs, but it doesn't make sense to use 20 communication tools in this digital niche. And this is exactly what happened now during the pandemics, and what was also mentioned by Karl, that he had to use 11 different communication tools because they were pushed by different authorities. Some were pushed on the faculty level, some on the course level, some at the university level, some on the project level. But this doesn't make sense because they all exist in the same niche, same ecological niche, and they actually use each other's energy. They actually kill each other because there is only so much energy in this niche. So it means that if you actually give it up and let this niche to self-regulate it, so it probably ends up in reducing rapidly the number of communication tools in this niche, or it allows some sort of interfacing different communication tool, like a front ends, to the same back end. And actually, if you look at the engineering point of view, it's old news. This standard for making messages flow from Skype to SMS to Twitter to Moodle, this technology has been around for 15 years. But it's used by not so many people, mostly by this do-it-yourself makerspace people and Linux community, for instance. But it should be normal also in academia that people can use only one communication tool of their preference, but it can be interfaced with a backend where your message is converted to universal message format that can be delivered to any other participant using any other kind of communication tool in the same niche. So, I don't know why it doesn't work still this way, because it's very easy to do technologically and would allow this self-regulation and dynamic evolution of ecological niches in the wider digital learning ecosystem. But it was just one example. Yeah, so there is also another view at the ecosystems and specifically coming from open systems theory. And one of my colleagues has been studying it. She's originally a biologist, so for her this is all familiar discourse and narrative, now just put into different context. So my colleague Kai Pata defines open learning ecosystem as an adaptive, complex and dynamic learning system in which self-directed learners design their learning environments, design their niches by changing the tools, expanding the set of tools. And also, with the help of these tools, they design their learning activities using the tools of their choice. And the second thing, that in these open learning ecosystems, self-directed learners follow open education principles by sharing freely over the internet knowledge, ideas, artifacts, and learning approaches. So, the monolithic old school systems we've been building in e-learning. What do they do to learning practices? We asked students to submit their homework assignments through plagiarism detector to see that they haven't copied any text from the other students. It all should be original. The students, of course, are actually forced because of this to do some tricks, you know, use synonyms and so on. And it means that instead of truly learning, they do some pseudo activities just to fool the plagiarism detector. So open learning ecosystem would work differently. That means any knowledge shared and reused is a good thing. So it means that if you take something from other learner and build on it, and using maybe his own words, yes, citing, referring to original source, being in dialogue with the original source, then this is perfect. This is what we want, actually. So I just remind here the words of the great innovator Steve Jobs, who said that mediocre artists copy, great artists steal. What's the difference? I always tell it to my student in the first lesson, first lecture, so that this is my principle. So stealing is encouraged in my courses. You can Google, you find something, you take this piece of text or artifact or anything, you build on it, you make it your own, and then it is stealing. If you just make copy and paste without citing the original author, then it's bad practice. It has nothing to do with learning, but stealing is good. But we need different kind of systems to support this kind of learning by stealing the ideas and building on the ideas of the others. So the more general ecological approach to learning from the pedagogical perspective that my colleague Kai Pata is working on, it works this way, that learner interacts with the learning community. So learning cannot be an individual thing. You interact with the community to build the ideas of the community, to be in dialogue with the community. You don't need to agree with the community. You can propose something different. But the two main processes that are in work there and help this kind of learning, the ecological learning, are accumulation and adaptation. And these are exactly the same two mechanisms through which self-regulation actually happens in biological ecosystems. I'm not going into deep, Kai has published papers on this, but I think that this new kind of ecological learning theory is brilliant, but the problem is that it needs new kind of approach also to our digital tools. So you cannot do it with Moodle very conveniently. Moodle actually pushes you towards different kind of learning. So to continue or to conclude with the ecological approach to learning is that acknowledgement that if we don't want to suppress bottom-up like self-directed e-learning designs, which may come from teacher side, but might also come from learner's side, we need to design digital learning tools for different niches in ecosystem that actually allow students and teachers to regain control on learner-initiated activities during the learning process. So it can have different names. In Estonian National Strategy 2035, this process is actually labeled as flexible or personalized learning paths. So this is the main aim of our next national strategy. We want to build education system and digital tools and platforms and content that actually helps us to move slightly towards this ecological type of learning, where learner is in the control of actually setting their own goals, their own path, using their own tools, but so that it doesn't lead this learner away from the community. Vice versa, it actually pushes the learner to use these own tools and own path and own content to communicate with the community, to steal the ideas from the community, to build them individually, collaboratively, and create new knowledge, sometimes in the form of new digital artifacts. This kind of approach sometimes is also called, as I mentioned, personal or flexible learning paths, but sometimes you can also approach it from the meta-design approach, or meta-design theory or narrative. Meta-design is design when you actually you don't design, let's say, learning process directly, saying that, okay, here are the chapters, after chapter 2 you need to take chapter 3, and at the end of chapter 3 there is a test and so on. But you rather leave the design decision for students themselves, and you do this your own design as an instructor only on meta level. So you only think that, okay, what are my requirements for outputs of the artifacts the students create? So what are the rules of the game in my playbook? It means that how much I expect students to collaborate, how much should they do individually, what are my methods and ways of supporting my students by different scaffolding methods, feedback, feed forward, and tools, and so on. So, so this kind of meta design, which is actually very characteristic to all these new ecological designs, also in road construction, the building new ecological type of buildings, farming. They all are based on this very similar meta design ideas that also can be applied in educational context. So. The two aspects that are I just picked that are really important for this ecological meta design are that the learning ecosystem should be evolving. You should design this learning ecosystem so that it can evolve through the end user design. It means end users are learners and teachers. So they should be able to expand your design with their own design decisions, tools, artifacts, content. And the other thing is that you need to scaffold this process because the students who we have in the university, they've been trained 12 years for a different kind of learning through acquisition of knowledge, where borrowing the ideas is wrong. You learn individually, you take your test individually, you copy knowledge. So we need to retrain them to different kind of learning, and this is a shock. This needs step by step kind of infiltration to this new kind of culture. And for that you need to provide various scaffolding, the social scaffolding, the pedagogical, and also the scaffolding by technology. Okay, but all these principles we try to apply in Estonia when building Estonian digital learning ecosystem on a national level. I bring you some examples of the different niches in this ecosystem. And the first niche is the learning resource sub-ecosystem or subsystem. So this is probably one of the largest niches in digital learning ecosystem, and it involves different sub-niches, which in this previous traditional closed world are not linked to each other. For instance, in many countries, open educational resources and commercial resources created by publishers, they live in completely separated two ecosystems that don't interact with each other. And I think this is wrong. So we've been trying in Estonia to design the tools that actually bring these two niches closer to each other. So we have created the National Catalog of Digital Learning Resources, where you can find, through browsing the curriculum taxonomy tree, from preschool curriculum till college curriculum, using the taxonomical keywords. You can find both commercial learning resources and the ones which are open completely, which you can copy, edit, make your own versions, and so on. And for this copying and making your own versions, which is part of self-regulation, you need the authoring tools. So it means that this is not just a catalog, we also provide and integrated to this catalog also authoring tool. Right now, the main authoring tool is H5P. It's an open source Norwegian tool that allows to create very nice looking interactive videos, multiple choice, match the pairs, fill in the blank exercises. There are like 40, 50 different templates, which we have expanded here in Estonia. We have added math support, support to chemical, organic chemistry symbols, and so on. And both the national catalog and also this related learning object authoring tool, they can be accessed by universal single sign-on tools like ID card, mobile ID, or your account from your school information system where the grades are stored. And then there are many commercial services that are provided either by Estonian companies, like e-textbooks are published by Estonian textbook publishers, but teachers more and more often they prefer to use other tools, like math teachers love GeoGebra, Desmos, physics teachers love PhET from Colorado University. And then there are some generic tools which are not subject related, like Nearpod or just the Google Suite, that are used by teachers for creating digital learning resources that then they share through this eSchool Bag catalog to their students. But the system is not final as yet. We are only making the first steps to build a learning analytics service that actually monitors this process and collects this digital footprints of the learners and actually feeds it back to learners and teachers in the visual graph form that informs learners and teachers in how well their personal learning theory actually works and how it could be improved, and or which would be your next step in your personal learning path. Yeah, so this is the one example from one niche. You can see example from eSchool Bag in mathematics, interactive learning resource in mathematics. Made with H5P, but we also know that we still miss or lack several elements here in this part of ecosystem, because right now most of the learners use these learning resources without logging into the system. It means that we cannot trace their personalized actions. It's good for privacy, but it's bad for analytics. So we have to solve it somehow. The other thing is that although it is connected now to national curriculum in this taxonomic keywords or the topics, it's not connected to learning outcomes. And our government now and Ministry of Education is making really big step towards truly outcome-based education. So in the new national curriculum, there will be only learning outcomes, no topics. So it means that we have to reorient also this links and to connect them, the learning resources and activities to learning outcomes. And we've been trying to build this kind of systems on the university level, which I will introduce next. But also we've been trying to envisage that how the next generation digital textbooks should look like, so that they would support this kind of ecological learning and they would become like part of this open ecosystem. And even if the textbook is not completely open, it's still commercial, protected with copyrights and so on. But we can still have, let's say, in this planetary system model for the next generation digital textbook, we could have this commercial part reduced, and it will be in just the core of the digital textbook. But teachers mostly use this other linked assignments, presentations, project tasks, which are like satellites around this the star, like planets in the orbit. And the darker blue ones are the ones that are actually accepted by the publisher of this stable core as a good enough quality that it's kind of approved. But the outer circle, the outer perimeter is the light blue elements. These are not yet accepted, so it means that these are made by teachers and maybe they are just candidates to become these accepted elements. Then the other alternative model would be like Linux, where we are releasing this dynamic core of the textbook 4 times a year. Like our apps are upgraded automatically in our smartphone. We could also envisage that these satellite elements 4 times a year, some of them are included in the dynamic core with the next version 3.2 of the mathematics textbook. Or we could have no core at all. So it means that every teacher, every student, they actually collect their own textbook from the components they found or made. So this is the most similar to the model that Karl worked. And to make an analytic framework to study this kind of next generation textbook, we created this kind of taxonomy that explains that how you can actually increase this self-regulation and autonomy of the learners in this niche of digital learning ecosystem, which involves digital learning resources. So it means that you start with just with digital resources like PDF, which can be only consumed or viewed or listened or read. Next level, students are able to annotate, like, comment, share. Next level, they are able to interact, enter their responses and get feedback without teachers to get any analytics about it. The teachers' analytics and feedback appears only on level 3. On level 4, students are able to expand with their own content, this textbook that they got from teacher. And level 5, they are able to remix it, edit the textbook. And on level 6, they are able to create their own textbook. Yeah, so another example from a learning management system part. We created here in Tallinn University an open learning management system called eDidaktikum. It's based on Drupal. And it's completely open because in this system, every student sees submissions made by other students for the homework assignment. So they can actually, in my courses, it's quite often some students delay their submission, so they could see that what the smarter students already submit, and then in their submission, they start dialogue with other students who submitted their homework before. It's really cool. Yeah, and in every step that we do here in this system, every forum post, every assignment, every learning resource I upload as a teacher to this platform is connected to skill taxonomy. So it means at the end of the studies, at the end of your teacher education program, with one mouse click, you can create automatic portfolio which is full of evidences that you actually created as your homework assignments or your reading tasks during the 2 years progress. And then you just add reflection and this is your portfolio. This is how it looks like, eDidaktikum, it's open source. And I'm not going to dig into this. This is the commercial platform that uses the same ideas, but visualizes this learning process as a path, learning path. So here is the demo course, the learning path on chemistry. Yeah, so I skip this one, and can I have back my last slide? Concluding slide. So conclusions is that in order to build this kind of and make a meta design for this digital learning ecosystems, we need very good collaboration between 3 parties: state agencies, ministry, university, academia that creates new knowledge, and private sector. Each of them have their own role here, and none of them could make this learning ecosystem to become alive and self-regulating and continuously evolving to meet the new challenges. There definitely will be new challenges after this pandemic. And to survive it, we need really resilient, self-regulating, self-evolving ecosystem, the digital ecosystem. So, this is it. I'm happy to respond to your questions if you have any.
Thank you very much, Mart. Yes, we do have questions. The presentation was very interesting and different level of questions are in the Q&A. May I first ask the audience, maybe you have immediate remark or comment. If no, let's pick then those from the app. So Carl's thesis about formal education as smart, well-structured education. And your thesis about flexible learning path, individual choices. How it goes together, in your opinion?
I think Carl actually dreams about future changes in this formal education system and the technical support to this formal education system that actually allows much more flexibility than there is today. So the vision of digital learning ecosystem I presented today, it actually tries to move the formal education system much closer to the Carl's informal education system, where he chooses, the learner chooses the tools, when he learns, what he learns, and how does he use this knowledge. So we try to open the formal education system and also the digital ecosystem for formal education up for this kind of learning. So I think that they are in very good match, but this is a future. So we're only making our first steps towards it.
So actually organizations have the menu to suggest to students. No one, yes, please, we have one question from the audience and then we have another from the app.
Is that working? Mart, that was like fascinating, and there's so much in there. You know, I've just found it really, really insightful. But I was wondering, like, one thing. Can we see the diagram with the cycle again? The ecology I can't remember the title, but there was a diagram with arrows earlier. It doesn't really matter if we can't see it, but referring to that, I'm thinking, and this is maybe a little bit against the current of what you've just been saying, but where is the instructor or the teacher in the ecology? You know, where does, because it's often about obviously the materials and the media, but I'm just thinking, where's the agency of the instructor in the moving system, as opposed to at the start, if you understand my point?
In my vision, and not only in my vision, so also many authors like, I don't know, Karl Bereiter, Kai Hakkarainen from Finland, Michael Fullan from Canada, they share the same view, that teacher should become a part of a learning community. Like Karl said, we learn together with our teacher how the 3D printer works. And sometimes students actually were ahead in this process. But they didn't leave the teacher behind. They took time to train the teachers how to do it. So the teacher is part of learning community, not a guru on top of the hill who knows everything and then just pours the knowledge down to ignorant students. So definitely teacher is part of the system. And the most important role for teacher is this meta design. It means that the design on the meta level that enables this kind of self-regulated learning. And the other function of the teacher is scaffolding. Scaffolding those students who are not there yet with their self-regulated learning skills. So they need more support. They get some support from their fellow students, some support from the system and resources, but they definitely need the support of the teacher. So there is no way we can exclude teacher from this future formula of smart digital learning ecosystems.
Thank you. We have two questions more on the app. One is more difficult, one is more practical. What do you prefer? First, maybe a practical one. To implement the flexible learning path is a great challenge for a school and a university. Are schools and universities not limited by quality assurance procedures in Estonia? And resource-wise, how can it be implemented?
So, of course, it depends on how you define flexible learning paths. So we here in Tallinn University, we have an ongoing research project on flexible learning paths, and there we see flexible learning paths primarily not as an individual activity of the student, which he or she carries out in front of the computer alone, but rather we see learning as a collaborative project-based activity where different students actually learn different things. So, but as a group, they deliver what was expected. So they make the student satellite fly and collect the data from space. But one student learns about optics, one about the material science, one about coding, and so on. But any other thing can be learned the same way. But of course, you need some base knowledge and mathematics, physics, astronomy, and so on to contribute as a team member. So, and I wouldn't say that this is so much about resources. For instance, we have in Estonia many schools who are jealous of these university students who are able to send their satellites up to the space. The S-Cube-1 project, I think the budget was 50,000, but S-Cube-2, I think it might be 300,000, something like this. That's why Karl was mentioning the fundraising. But we have 25 Estonian schools who have joined into a network of space schools where they use very cheap technologies like hydrometeorological balloon to send Raspberry Pi, Arduino with sensors and cameras to the level of 32 kilometers above the Earth. It's the border, the stratosphere. It's border of where the oxygen ends. And they take magnificent photos there. They collect the data and so on. So the budget is like between 100 and 200 euros. So it's not about resources as such. It's more about opening up different kind of learning and accepting it as a part of your curriculum, not something which is extracurricular. And this is where Estonian schools are now heading. All Estonian schools engaged students, at least in 8th grade, in this kind of collaborative project-based activities. And the same thing happens in Finland. They call it phenomenon-based learning in Finland. But the idea is the same. So it's not about resources, it's about removing fixed regulations that block the open learning.
Okay, one more question from the app and maybe one final from the audience if available. How do you see the rewilding movement where there are efforts to return to the environment, to a more natural state, fitting your ecosystem metaphor? In other words, we are returning bear and wolves back to the environment as we understand the importance of ecological diversity for our long-term resilience and survival. Yeah, so again, there are the different narratives, discourses, different groups. In Estonia, like in many other countries, we have a group of people who are actually trying to go back nostalgically to the times where there was no digital technology. But I don't think the society at large is ready for this scenario. So I personally, I've never lived in the city. I live in the countryside for all my life. I have 2 hectares of land. I have 25 fruit trees, 2 greenhouses, chicken and big dog. And so I live like very traditional life, and I have very fast internet connection. I have smart house, which I built myself, lots of sensors and automation and so on. So I don't see this as in conflict. So you actually, vice versa, if you want to build ecological design of a house or schoolhouse or learning ecosystem, you need both. You need natural way of living, you need to get closer to the nature, but at the same time use the most modern technology, Internet of Things, VR, AR, sensors, and all of it. So I don't see it as a conflict. Thank you very much, Mart. That is a great balance that we, I think, all aiming at. There are more important and interesting questions on the app, and I'm sure that flexibility will allow you to answer those. So please give big applause to Mart. Thank you.